The Labor Party says it's found damning evidence to implicate Campbell Newman in financial impropriety relating to his association with a developer. The Crime and Misconduct Commission is assessing donations made from a developer to Mr Newman's Lord Mayoral election campaign fund. Campbell Newman vehemently denies the allegations and says voters are being turned off by the constant muckraking. State political reporter Chris O'Brien reports.
The CMC is examining donations last year by a developer to Campbell Newman's Lord Mayoral re-election campaign. The Premier called a news conference to fire more ammunition. One of the developer's companies was registered at a Spring Hill building owned by Mr Newman's in-laws.
Mr Newman can no longer pretend that he knew nothing about these donations.
She claims the link is obvious.
So one of Mr Newman's biggest political campaign donors has been running one of his businesses out of a property owned by Campbell Newman's family.
But the LNP leader says hundreds of businesses are registered there at an accountant's firm.
It's like a parking bay for companies, and there is absolutely no relationship between the tenant and my family.
The Premier says there's another connection.
He ceased to operate it out of that business address on the day that Campbell Newman announced that he would make a bid for State Parliament.
Mr Newman says it has nothing to do with him.
I draw your attention to people who've sat down and mapped out sort of the assassination of Lincoln and the assassination of Kennedy. This is loopy, mad, incompetent nonsense.
Even before today, there's been talk of legal action against Labor's election ads.
The LNP wrote a letter, as I understand it, to the Labor Party pointing out that their ads are completely and utterly false.
The lawyers who wrote to the ALP say they're acting for Campbell Newman and his wife, demanding that defamatory imputations immediately cease. Mr Newman says voters aren't interested in dirt.
These good people all know. They know what the vibe is out in this electorate.
Away from integrity issues, Mr Newman was among friends here at an LNP fundraising lunch, where the guest of honour was the former Prime Minister, John Howard. Mr Howard was happy to help.
If they want to drag you out and call you to the colours for a day or two, well, you know, I'll very reluctantly have my arm twisted.
Mr Howard lost his seat in his last election, but has better expectations for Mr Newman.
He will win Ashgrove. He'll do better than I did.
To be determined in 9 days.
Yeah.
And state political reporter Chris O'Brien joins us now from Parliament House. And Chris, how damaging are these new claims to Campbell Newman's campaign?
David, this isn't the smoking gun, but another in a long sequence of accusations. The shows, I think, just how relentless are Labor's efforts to try to convince voters that Campbell Newman had improper business dealings, which he flatly denies. His reaction over the months has ranged from anger to frustration to today's outpouring of scorn, calling the Premier loopy. He firmly believes voters have had enough of this story.
And what do you expect will happen next?
Well, the CMC will assess and decide if it needs to be investigated, but the accusations won't stop, not now with 9 days to go. It will be interesting to see, though, if it does crop up in tonight's community forum and, of course, in the next poll, not to mention Monday's face-to-face debate between the two leaders.
Thank you, Chris. State political reporter Chris O'Brien there at Parliament House.